Welcome to Truth Be Told, everyone. I'm Captain Ron, and with me, of course, is Tony Sweet. We have a very special show today. We have not in studio, but we do have on camera Mara Gordon, and she's going to speak to us about the whole conspiracy that surrounds the cannabis going through Prohibition.
Right.
And as you know, it's a hot topic right now. A lot of states have gone legal. We have 29 states currently in the country that have at least medicinal cannabis. We have 8 that have recreational cannabis. California, as a matter of fact, in 3 weeks will become a recreational state for cannabis. And there's a lot of lies and nonsense that go through what happened 75, 85 years ago in the 30s when cannabis prohibition started. And we're trying to finally fix that and move in the right direction. Mara's an amazing individual. I've spoken to her before. She's doing incredible things with real sick people and really genuinely helping people today. And it's amazing, and we're really glad to have her on the show. Please welcome Mara Gordon. Hi, Mara.
Hi, how are you, Ron? Good to see you again.
Good seeing you. I appreciate you coming on Truth Be Told.
Absolutely.
Well,
So,
yeah, I am very interested because the Prohibition, we've always heard about the Prohibition when it comes to alcohol. You don't really hear about the marijuana side of it.
it's true.
There's been movies and television shows all about it, but we don't hear anything about the marijuana.
And that was what, the 20s, right? So this is
About
like
the same
right
time.
after that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was like this. It was like 1930. It was like once you have a bureaucracy in place, it has to find a reason to perpetuate itself. And with the end of Prohibition, these people had to keep their jobs and keep their budgets. And so demonize the next thing on the list.
Isn't it great that stuff doesn't still go on today in government, Mara?
Right. Yeah.
We
I
were
feel
just-
like right now, if we were going to talk about what the conspiracies are that are going on right now, it would just say, just turn on the news.
That's
everything. Everything.
We were just talking before we went on the air how amazing every day there's a new thing that seems suspicious. You know there's nonsense going on. And now we have a little bit of reflection. We've had time. We can look back and see what happened in the 30s to cannabis and what a just a horrible thing that's unjust, right?
Absolutely. And we still are in Prohibition, which is why we can't really look back at it yet.
Right. Well,
In
well, that's
49 states, it's still federally illegal.
That's true.
well. Shall we start to find out why? Because cannabis was, like you said, Henry Ford and
Well,
many
before
other.
that, 10,000 years, people were using cannabis medicinally. Is that right, Mara?
It is right. There's references it to in old Chinese apothecary literature. There's evidence of it in excavated graves from ancient graves that there's cannabis seeds in there. So absolutely.
In Egypt, I think they found stuff in Egypt in pipes. They've had different cannabis in Asia.
Yep.
So that went on for years and years and years, and then the 30s came.
Right.
Right.
Do you want to talk a little bit about what happened then?
Well, it's interesting that you had. I mean, it's not too different. You just have to change and put different names in today compared to what we had then, which is the saddest part. But in this quote unquote democracy we live in. But Randolph Hearst was the largest newspaper conglomerate, and he owned considerable paper mills and forestry in Mexico at the time. And I think one of the things that isn't always talked about is the fact that he had it in for the Mexican people anyway because of Pancho Villa nationalizing his lands. So he had, besides the fact that hemp was cheaper and hemp was a better alternative and everything, he just had a bone in his craw because of that altogether. So you had a bit of a perfect storm because you had, with the Industrial Revolution you had the situation where there's Pancho Villa. So funny. So in the Industrial Revolution, you had all the positive things that came about, the fact that more things were automated, things were being done, textiles. Then, of course, you had your single molecule medicines and your plant medicines were becoming demonized and all that sort of thing. So you had the DuPonts and the others all coming out at the same time along with Hearst, all wanting to push their agendas. And hemp, which cannabis, was hemp. Hemp is the same thing. Was an easy target because it was going to be cutting into their market shares for their truly industrialized businesses.
Hemp's basically cannabis. It's the same thing, but it doesn't have the THC in it. That's basically the only difference, right, Mara?
Well, technically, there is no difference from because cannabis, there are so many different varietals. It's all cannabis sativa. And so if you talk to the cannabis people like me on the medical side of things, I say cannabis and hemp. You talk to the hemp people, they say cannabis and MMJ. So nobody can get the nomenclature decided on at this point. But the reality is anything that is classified, and this is a completely arbitrary classification, but anything that has less than 0.3% THC in it, it would be considered hemp.
Gotcha. And so it's the usual round of suspects, right? We've got the pharmaceutical industry with Rockefeller to Carnegie. We've got, you mentioned DuPont. We've got Hearst with journalism. And then also, wasn't there the oil industry was kind of involved with Andrew Mellon?
Absolutely, 100%.
Horrible.
I mean, hemp is just one of those things, and cannabis in general is one of those rare products that can be used in so many different arenas. I mean, it's like when people talk, and that's one of the problems that I feel like that we're having with regulation around it, is how do you, it's regulating every single division of the economy.
Right, each discipline, right.
Whether it's the fuel industry, the textile industry, right, the food industry. I mean, the pharmaceutical, I mean, it's all of those, and it's all using the same plant.
And all of those are making plenty of money without cannabis coming in and messing that up for them, right?
Exactly.
But why? But why? I don't understand. Back in the day, was it just cheaper to, go get the oil, or was?
Well, he went out and bought millions of acres of land to use that timber for the thing, and then they came up with the idea of how to use hemp as paper, and it was way more affordable.
But that's what I'm saying. What if it was more affordable? Because oil you can't use that much other than running, your lamps and oil, cars and everything else. But
that's a lot of
oil. If you could still use hemp and cannabis to fuel cars and make paper and pretty much anything you can think of, why would they choose oil?
Well, because there's things of like go ahead, Mara, you tell them.
Profit margins. If you have a renewable resource like hemp that is so easily grown,
too cheap,
and it grows anywhere, and while it's growing, by the way, it's also cleaning your soil.
Right.
Let's not forget that, and making the earth better than instead of detracted from it. You cannot charge as much as you can for something like paper. Right. And it wasn't a new thing for hemp because the Declaration of Independence, I believe, was written on hemp paper.
Oh,
Yeah. So
and all those guys, those founding fathers, were all hemp farmers. Washington, all those guys, they had hemp farms.
It was required that you plant hemp as part of the war effort.
Yep.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing?
Wow. See, they don't talk about that.
They don't talk about that. That's right.
Not at all.
It's required, and all our top guys had hemp farms. Everybody did.
Yeah.
It's incredible. So it's disgusting. And then the pharmaceutical industry, we have the problem with it being a plant. Like you called it specifically a single molecule. It's because you can't patent something like that, right, Mara?
Right. You can file patents. I mean, GW Pharmaceuticals has, over 30 or 40, probably more, 50 patents now on different cannabis profiles. But really, it's extremely difficult to enforce. It's very difficult because they're, in one plant, you might have 400 different compounds in the one plant. You can't standardize that and claim that it's all your molecule. It's kind of hard to do that. So they're coming up with the genome where they have the actual profiles of the plant, and they'll say, okay, we're going to patent this profile. But every time you grow it, it grows a little differently. It's never identical. So then you're within ranges and et cetera, et cetera. So it's really much squishier. The other thing is, frankly, we have gone from doctors being scientists to doctors being just, basically clerks that write prescriptions on a pad. You come in, they say, okay, you have this diagnosis. It says here in this, you give them this, and you give them this amount, and they write that out. back in the day, when you were using whole plant medicines, doctors had to be more involved in the dosing and understanding of what was going to work best for different people. And they kind of got away from that more with these standardized pharmaceuticals that are the single molecule.
Mm. What do you think of GW Pharmaceuticals? What is your thoughts on that company?
I think that I was really encouraged about what they were doing early on, and I considered them I was hopeful. And then I've watched, and they've become just another pharmaceutical company, as far as I can see. I mean, I have as one of my companies is Zelda Therapeutics. And we're actually funding preclinical and clinical research to do very much the same thing. I'm going to turn my light on in here, guys, just so that I can see it's getting kind of dark.
I'm going to go ahead and turn Tony's off so people don't have to look at him.
Don't want to scare him away.
Sorry about that, guys.
Oh, that's
no
okay.
worries.
There you go. That's better.
So I started this, and one of the reasons we did it was as a counter to GW that is really... It's all about filing patents and not really about creating the best possible medicines. Because I haven't seen anyone yet that's really been successfully treated with Sativex or Epidiolex.
Which are their two...
I was going to say, what is
those
that?
are their two patents that they have on...
okay.
Exactly. I mean, they came out with a report that they were going to be issuing on GBM, glioblastoma multiforme, that they'd done a study on it. And we've all been waiting for the results for it that they supposedly said were available for ages now, and I don't see them coming out. So it kind of reminds me a little bit, not to slam our friends at Microsoft, but for anyone who has been part of all those operating system wars, Microsoft would announce, way before they had anything ready to release, just to stop other people from coming in and filling the gap. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of GW.
Gotta love big business, huh, Tony?
Right.
Well, Mark, let's go back to what happened in 1930 now. So you got Anslinger going around. Right. Or were we before him still? We're still talking about Hearst.
Well, Anslinger, he was heading up the Bureau of I think it was the Federal Bureau of Narcotics.
Right, and he just happened to be the son-in-law of Andrew Mellons, who was running. He was Secretary of State, Secretary of Treasury.
And I believe he was only temporarily put into that position and then figured out a way to get in there permanently. But when the position was going to go away with the end of Prohibition, and they had started the narcotics, he had said previously that he didn't think there was any danger or anything bad about cannabis, but all of a sudden when it was his job, it kind of reminds me of George W. Bush or George H.W. Bush that was talking about voodoo trickle-down economics.
Right.
And all of a sudden he was vice president. He thought it was the best thing in the world. Same sort of thing.
Wouldn't it be great if we had video back then of having Harry Anslinger, the guy that killed cannabis, saying it's essentially no big deal.
Right.
Unbelievable.
And also the fact that they were using the word marijuana, which was a derogatory term, even though it's a perfectly acceptable it's a term that's used in Mexico, but they put this whole package around it of negativity and danger and white women are going to be raped by black men if they smoke this evil weed, and you're going to go crazy and start murdering people, and the whole reefer madness thing. I mean, it was a brilliant campaign.
It's awful though, because it's a different time, so racism was stronger, right? It was a bigger deal then, so they used that to their advantage by throwing cannabis into that mix and associating that with that. And the jazz musicians would smoke cannabis, or reefer they called it, right?
Do you really think it was more prejudice back then, or do you just think that it was different groups? Because I would argue that if you were a Muslim in this country right now, you might think that it's just as discriminatory towards you as they were to the Mexicans back then.
Right. Well, I guess I meant towards Mexicans and blacks. I think that was way stronger in the 30s than it is today.
Right. Except that we have a president calling them a bunch of rapists.
Well, then they did 2 years ago, let's say.
Okay, I mean, it's like it just doesn't end.
I know it's amazing, but I mean, I think certainly there was more stronger racism, at least between black and white back then, 80 years ago, and certainly associating cannabis with that, calling it marijuana,
right,
really played into that.
Right. Right. I agree with you. And I think also because before the Civil Rights Act of 64, you had so much more segregation.
Right.
And as a result, people didn't interact as much with people of other races. And so that lack of familiarity has created a lot of the myths. But I tell you what, I took a 2-year road trip back in 2008 to 2010. And across America, when you get into those middle square states, they're pretty homogenous. And I would suggest that they may have some of the same thinking, especially with social media and the way the news is now, that you only have to watch things of people that agree with you.
Right.
You don't have access to new ideas.
It's true.
It is true. It
Yeah.
is true.
I hate to be a negative on it, but I'm not that impressed with any lack of discrimination and prejudice at this point for each other. And I feel like a lot of it is done because it's mandated, not because it's not what people still think.
Agreed. Let's go back to what happened with Anslinger.
Let's do it. Let me pull
They
up some
tell me
stuff.
no.
Yeah, I'm like,
I was hoping you could tell, but I can add.
So I mean, Anslinger, he bastard. He made it all, and when they surveyed all the different medical professionals, American Medical Association, and all that, they used the word marijuana. They did not use the word cannabis, so they didn't even know they were talking about the same thing. They started this whole campaign of the congressional hearings and all, and got first the tax on it, and then it went from the hemp tax or the Marijuana Act and all that, and then they started the whole thing of getting it illegal across the whole world, pressuring at the UN.
Didn't the AMA actually said at that point, they testified, there is no evidence that marijuana is a dangerous drug?
Absolutely. And I've actually spoken with, there's Dr. David Bierman, who's an interesting character out of Santa Barbara, who works with cannabis, has an interesting background. He's written a couple of books on the history of the drug war in general. And his father, I mean, Dr. Bierman is much older than me, and his father, so we're talking, quite a bit older. And there's David. His father was a pharmacist, and his father, he's told stories about how his father had no idea that they were talking about cannabis, because he was prescribing cannabis regularly for his patients, in the form of, I mean, it used to be you get caught with cannabis back in the day, you just told the cop that you had asthma because it was a normal prescription for asthma, against asthma. Yeah.
It's amazing.
They really pulled the wool over the public's eyes.
It's disgusting. It happened right on the congressional floor. The way they did that is just horrible. Right. And that's one of the most amazing things is when they pushed this bill through on the floor. This, to me, researching this, I found this the most interesting thing. Many of the people voting on it didn't even realize that cannabis and marijuana were the same thing.
Exactly.
Because they used that term. They're like, oh, yeah, marijuana, that's bad. Cannabis, no, that's good for you.
Right.
Isn't that insane?
Very clever.
Disgusting.
Yep.
Clever's a nice way to say it, Mara, but I would say disgusting.
Yeah.
And that's how they pushed it through.
Yep. Exactly.
They also made the entire plant illegal nationally. Even though THC is only found in the leaf and the flower, they made the whole thing out so you can't use it for these other industries, like in concrete, like in building, like in paper. So the entire plant.
What were they afraid of? They're putting in concrete. What's the hell? What if they're not?
They just didn't want people growing it. Period. They were just banning it from the face of the earth. They were treating it like a polio, something to be gotten rid of globally.
I find that fascinating. That's like, saying a rose, oh, we're going to ban all roses because, I mean, like, it's naturally it's been here longer than we have. It's like
they really pulled the wool over people's eyes.
Yeah.
Look at how successful that campaign was. Everybody believed all these horrible things, and here, look at all the great uses it has.
Right. Dr. Ethan Russo just released a paper recently talking about the stems and roots and their uses for them of cannabis plant, and they don't contain any of the trichomes or the cannabinoids or anything, yet they have phenomenal medical benefit as well. So the beautiful thing about that plant is no matter what part you use, you're going to get some sort of benefit from it. So, it's kind of, do you say, okay, if you're going to have this benefit here, then you're going to eliminate using this here? So I read a story, actually, that's a lie. I read the headline. In the first line of it, that's all I had time for, that about in states right now that have legalized cannabis, they have a reduction in alcohol sales, significant reduction in alcohol sales.
That's true.
And we know already, of course, that there's a huge reduction in opioid use.
There are several drugs that cannabis helps with that have seen a huge decline in those states, which is remarkable. Now, who's that hurt? The pharmaceutical industry,
right?
Pharmaceutical, exactly, and the pharmacies and the drug reps and all the trickle down jobs that go in through that rabbit hole.
Absolutely, Mara. Also, we were talking right before the show, Tony and I, of how Henry Ford had that car. He had the cannabis car. That both the car was made out of cannabis. They used the hemp as instead of steel, so it was lighter and supposedly stronger. And then he also had fuel that some of these cars that Ford designed ran on cannabis oil or something, right?
Right. And so he actually, there's a famous picture of Henry Ford taking a mallet and hitting the fender and nothing happening from the hemp car.
Man.
So, yeah,
we got to get rid of this hemp plant because, boy, it's better than steel, it's better than oil, it's better than pharmaceuticals. We better put an end to it, right?
Absolutely. There it is.
Hey, nice work, Tony.
Yeah, good job. Yeah, so it's absolutely. The other thing is, though, Henry Ford was a renowned anti-Semite, and there was a lot of things. It's weird how hemp, of all things, and cannabis got tied up so much in
racism,
anti-Semitism, and racism, and all the things that were going on during that time. It always gets back to fear and ignorance and hatred. It's
horrible, though. It's like this cannabis thing is such a look at all the positives we just talked about that still haven't come back. We don't see it like you can buy hemp paper. I wouldn't even know how to get something like that.
Right. It's all you can get some of these things. Like I'm always all excited if I see someone that's selling like hemp T-shirts.
Sure.
Like we have our corporate logo T-shirts and stuff, and I like them to be hemp material and things like that. But the prices we have to pay are exorbitant because of what they have to pay for growing and processing and the taxes, and instead of being treated like any other crop.
Because then it would be half the price.
Right.
Absolutely.
It should be cheaper. It's such it's an excellent example of all of these, what do you call them? All these different things of the Illuminati or whoever, all these big businesses that squash. Cannabis is a perfect textbook example of what can happen.
Right.
So disgusting.
Right. But we have our government doesn't care about us.
No.
I hate to make that kind of a statement because it's really sad, but it's the truth. They don't. When we have somebody like Jeff Sessions in office who is perpetuating the myth of cannabis being as bad for you or worse than heroin.
Yep. Isn't that insane? In 2017, somebody would say that.
Well, I have a theory that somebody has to work really hard to remain ignorant in 2017. So it's a willful ignorance. It's like the equivalent of going la 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 in the dark. You're not afraid. I feel like that's what he's doing. In fact, I'd love to see a meme of him doing that or a GIF.
Right, because there's just so many articles. I have the show, obviously, Elevate the Conversation, where we talk about legalization of cannabis. And what's happened just in my 3 years of doing that program, I have learned so much. Read an article. You're Jeff Sessions. You should be able to have access to this information. Believe me, he could know better. He speaks like he doesn't know anything.
He can look at our data.
That's it.
My God. one of our kids that we've been treating since 2013, they did an article on him yesterday, or 2 days ago, that came out in LA on the fact that he got a diagnosis of cancer, and, you know, he went through regular chemotherapy and did all that, but he did it along with cannabis, and he was able to do it faster and eliminate all those other prescriptions for nausea and pain and all those things because the cannabis took care of it. Why is that not evidence? Now, it's not double-blind scientific evidence for the purposes of medical efficacy to come out with a prescription for it. I get that, which is why we're doing that through Zelda Therapeutics.
But they have not allowed us to study it in America because they made it a Schedule I drug, which you can't have these studies. We can't. Isn't that insane? And now that they're allowing studies, they allowed studies if you can prove something detrimental about it.
Exactly. Like, let me prove why it doesn't work.
Right. But you can't study to show how it does help. Now, okay, so we know what happened here. This is a horrible thing, that it's a misnomer. The information that people have, that I grew up with, that most of us did, about marijuana because of what happened in the 30s. We all had disinformation, clearly, right?
Correct.
Okay, so now that we're learning the truth, that this actually is a beneficial thing, it's a good plant for many, many things. Mainly, let's talk about medicinal use, just since that's your area, Mara. Why don't you tell us where it is going and what it is doing for people? What are you guys seeing?
Well, we've been working with cannabis now as a medicine for about 7 years, a little over 7 years now. And one of the things that we have found is that if you can identify within the body whether there are going to be CB1 or CB2 receptors, these are cannabinoid receptors within the body that can be activated by cannabis or somehow affected by it, you are going to be able to impact all the systems within your body. The endocannabinoid system is a bit like the body regulator, so that it interacts with all your other systems. Traditional pharmaceuticals will target a particular system within your body. And when you're dealing with cannabinoid medicine, it's really the whole body because of where the receptors are. We've been dealing with, when we first started out, and a lot of our practice is around diseases of aging. We deal a lot with chronic pain, autoimmune disorders, sleep, a lot of skin disorders, things like that. But we have a huge percentage of our patients base that are using cannabis in one form or another to deal with the cancer they have. A lot of times they'll use cannabis as a way to alleviate the side effects of their traditional medicines, or they're at end of life stage, and they make a decision that they just want to use cannabis to have comfort on their way out. The vast majority of our patients, though, will start using cannabis, and once they get past that initial resistance, because they're, let's face it, we live in a society where euphoria is considered a negative side effect. So once they get past that and they say, wow, I can use this and it's really amazing. And at the same time, all of a sudden my cancer is reducing. Then they go on and they end up using it to actually shrink or eliminate cancer, tumors within their body and cancer within their bloods, etc. So been doing that. We have, I would say, about at least half of our practice is cancer patients.
Wow. So you're dealing with really sick people, and you've seen firsthand this genuinely helping people improve.
100%. I mean, we've been, in fact, the documentary "We the People's" coming out that Ricky Lake put together, it's been following me and a few of my patients since 2013. And it's all cancer kids in there. In fact, one of them has gone on to become her own little canna celebrity. Not her child, of course, she has, the mother. But we've been treating children quite a bit. We have a lot of children, a lot of elderly. I mean, our youngest patient we ever treated, we actually treated a pregnant woman. So technically we were actually decided to the child. But the youngest actual child we treated was 2 weeks. Wow. And then the oldest person we've treated is 97. So, wow. Everybody has an endocannabinoid system. Everyone's dog, cat, everything. Even a sea squirt has one. Now,
you're using cannabis directly as a medication, because like some people think of this as cannabis helps with the cancer, where people are taking chemo and they can't eat. They end up taking cannabis to help them get their hunger back,
Right.
things like that. Are you doing it in conjunction with regular drugs, or you're saying just cannabis alone shows improvements?
We are all about integrative medicine, not alternative. So there are, the old, cut, slash, and burn, the whole old approach to cancer treatments of, cut it, burn it, poison it, which has been around since the 50s. That's the way they've been doing things and earlier, and they still are doing those things those way. Some of those methodologies of chemotherapies and radiations are very effective. I mean, if somebody comes to me and they've got a type of cancer where there's a 75 or 80% chance that chemotherapy is going to get rid of it and keep them in remission for up to 5 years, or at least 5 years, something like that, they would be crazy not to do it along with cannabis. Because what cannabis does is it protects the healthy cells while it helps to destroy the malignant cells. So it acts as an adjunct to the chemotherapy, but protects the other cells from being damaged at the same time.
What would also be crazy is if you lived in a state where you couldn't have access to this, and you had cancer, and you were suffering and or dying, as you said, some people are end-of-life care, but you can't have this because we've decided that this is an illegal product. Are you serious?
I had a woman contact me. It was so heartbreaking. I mean, I have these heartbreaks. I can't even tell you how often somebody contacts me and they're so full of hope, and then it turns out they live in, wherever. But
Kansas.
This one woman, this older woman, she was like in her 70s, and she was in so much pain and suffering, and she had stage 3 cancer. And I'm like, are you telling me? I'm looking at your state thing and it says cancer is one of the things. She goes, yeah, but you have to be stage 4.
Oh my God.
So pretty much gone.
See, I'd like to sit that guy down.
But see that listen, I have someone in my family, and I won't say who it is, but has Parkinson's and lives in a state that it's not legal medically or recreational, and I convinced him to, even though I don't take cannabis at all for any reason, I never even thought about it, but seeing him going through increased Parkinson's, finally talked him into it. Found out my cousin actually has a distribution in Colorado. I did not know, but so he drove down to Kansas and gave my
friend
some cannabis oil with THC in it. He said that it's not gotten worse. It's not gotten a lot better, but he says my blood pressure is normal. My vision, which was blurry, is now normal. I'm sleeping better at night, which was a lot of the medication that they was taking for Parkinson was so harsh. He was breaking out in hives. He couldn't sleep. So it's helped him a lot. And so, but yeah, he's like, oh, don't tell anybody. But
there's still that stigma. Even these are adults. These are older people,
Yeah.
and they have that. I mean, I know we all grew up with it,
Right.
but
I
it's
grew up
so
with it.
hard to believe. God, if somebody came to me sick like that, I'd say, take heroin, take whatever to help you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When I first looked at cannabis as an option for as a medical option, I had to put away a lot of my own prejudices because I too believed that it was a gateway drug. And frankly, I didn't
devil's
know
weed.
I didn't know anybody who, I knew people who used cannabis that didn't use drugs, like harder drugs.
Right.
Sure.
But I didn't know anybody who used harder drugs who didn't also use cannabis. So I wasn't sure where the line was, and I was very concerned about it. And I had all my prejudices, just like anybody else. I mean, I grew up in Texas, in Dallas, Texas, and I mean, if you got caught with a seed in your car, it could be life in prison back in the day.
Right.
So I mean, it was really drilled in that marijuana is bad, and when I finally realized that the word marijuana is bad.
Right.
Right. That I understood that it had medical benefits. But I've told people, this is your life. I mean, you're talking about life or death here. So really, how much power are you going to give to these people to have a determination around whether you have a right to live and the quality of your life? You're not hurting anybody at all, and even to be able to grow your own and make your own, if that's what you want to do, who are you hurting? Now, having said that, I'm a stickler about lab testing and oversight and regulation. I believe that we need all of those things around this, because you have these Facebook groups and these social media gurus that don't know their head from a hole in the ground, making claims and selling contaminated products on Amazon and on Etsy. I mean, that's not where you buy your medicine.
Right. This is the great thing about legalization, is because now you can get clean pharmaceutical grade, no pesticides, no whatever. This is a good thing, because otherwise people are going to go underground. They've been doing that for 10,000 years, as we know.
Right.
And who knows what you're getting.
Well, there's a pivot point, though, because, I mean, we're dealing with all this right now. I'm actually on a panel at the Emerald Cup tomorrow talking about manufacturing and testing and regulation. And the one big concern is the more they tack on, the more it's going to make the price untenable for many people and send them back to the black market. That happened in Colorado initially with the taxation. Cannabis is already a discriminatory medicine just because of the fact that it's not covered by health insurance. So, just that alone makes it not fair, because if somebody has a choice of taking an opioid and having their prescription covered by, or a steroid or anything else, and have it covered by their insurance policy, but then they choose to use this other, but they have to pay for it out of their own pocket, and there are no price controls or anything like that, then it is really not fair. So, the
crack in this armor is in Canada, that the largest grocery chain there does cover cannabis for medicinal use. Yep. Isn't that fantastic? That's the first big thing towards this movement. Hopefully that's coming. Once pharmaceutical companies see or insurance companies will see what they could save on pharmaceuticals,
right,
it could come. There's definitely a profit motive there. There's definitely a way to save money. The cannabis works for so many different ailments. Right. I can really see that one. We could win that one, I would think.
I agree with you. I would believe that the insurance companies are going to really drive the legalization once they start seeing their bottom line on this.
Right.
Because right now there are states where somebody will contact me and they'll say, yeah, I can use it, but only after every other drug has failed. So
once I'm on death's door, then I'm allowed.
Right.
You have to buy all the pharmaceuticals. You have to be out all the co-pays. The insurance companies have to be out all the money, and then just to prove they don't work, to be able to then use something that does.
Now, see, I don't understand how you look someone in the face and say, if you're that sick and that uncomfortable, seeing somebody suffer and or dying, why not let them try that? What are we doing? What is the end game here? I can see the argument for keeping it out of high schools. We don't want these kids wasting their lives or whatever. That's an argument to be made. But when you're talking about somebody that has any of the, if you have cancer, you're above the law in my book, right? Why are we fighting against these people?
Well, to your point, let me just comment on your thing about high schools, because I would rather the kids in high school were smoking a joint than drinking a beer or popping Adderall,
right,
or all these other things that they're doing, because kids are going to do something.
Sure.
For harm reduction, let's do something that's not going to be destroying their liver or their lives in the meantime.
Or their families' lives, because that affects everyone around, and alcohol can affect the whole family, as we all know.
And the myth of the stoner being couch locked, that's just another myth that's being perpetuated. Because, I mean, I'm one of the most highly functional people I know, and I use cannabis, high levels of it every single day. I mean, not that high, but high enough that it would be a problem. If somebody would look at that and go, whoa, she uses that, she's stoned, she can whatever. Come on. I'm running 3 businesses right now.
That's finally changing, I think, a little bit. And you know what? Like these high-profile athletes, as soon as they retire, they come out and say, "Yes, I used cannabis to help me recover." These are top athletes.
Right. Exactly.
It's not the Cheech and Chong thing, because first we had the reefer madness that got buried in everybody's head. Then came the 70s, and then you got the Cheech and Chong mentality. You think it's people sitting around not doing anything, watching TV,
Right.
and that's just really not who uses cannabis in most parts.
But do you think, because even I'm going to just kind of compare it to the LGBT community, because if you think about the media, always covers always covered, you know, the flamboyant, the drag queens, you know, the butch dykes, you know, and so they put them out there in front of the camera, and so that's what people thought they were.
That's the face of it. Yeah.
Same with cannabis.
Sure.
Cheech and Chong, you know, the stoners that just like where I grew up. Oh, he's a bum. He's lazy. That's what they. Even I got instilled in my head, and that's one reason I was like, I don't want to touch it. I don't want to be like that.
It's not that.
So, but now I think, again, you know, as you see more LGBT are getting more
great point.
normal,
Right,
normal folks, and same with
even the UFO
cannabis
stuff, Tony.
Yeah,
look at how the UFO stuff gets. It's a crazy guy thought he saw a UFO.
right.
You know, that's who they put on TV. The
Right.
guy with the tinfoil hat.
Right. Yeah, you're 100% right, Tony. That's exactly the way that they're taking. I back when growing up in Dallas, I used to run political campaigns. And I actually had a specialty in a lot of gay and lesbian candidates. Mm-hmm. And one of my gay candidates, God love him. I mean, first of all, the Dallas Morning News could not write an article where it didn't say Jerry Birdwell, homosexual. You know, right. I mean, it had to on every single article. It was just like it was mandatory to
right.
like slamming it. And I was like, oh, I'd be proud of that.
Right.
But, they would I would tell him, I'd say, you need to be dressed like in a suit, in a tie, perfectly every single time.
Right.
Because, and if we did a parade, for example, they would show the guy that was wearing the leather chaps with the leash around his neck.
Tony Sweet, right.
Jerry, instead of showing Jerry as the serious judge
right.
who was, you know, running for re-election. And it used to just drive me crazy by the unfairness of it all. But, you know, for a harm reduction, we owe it to our young people. We owe it to our society as a whole to have them have the ability to have access to medicines that can really make a difference without harming them at the same time. I mean, people don't sit around and get munchies. In fact, we find that we're able to use CBD and THCV to lower the insulin and block the appetite. I mean, so all of the myths are just that. They're just myths.
The myths are insane because it's true that actually the body mass index of people that use cannabis is typically lower.
Exactly.
Isn't that insane? But one thing, Mara, don't you feel that hopefully, I feel that we're on the right side of this issue, of the cannabis issue. I, in my brain, think 100 years from now, people are going to look back and laugh at this time because it'll be obvious that cannabis will go back to what it once was, which is medicinally used throughout all these other industries. Don't you think it's going that way, please?
Yes, and I hope to God it's not 100 years. I hope they look back at that in another 20 years.
I hope, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be great. But I mean, boy, we still have 21 states that don't even have medical, don't even have medical cannabis.
Well, I have a picture, and this is almost like the voting map.
It is. It's red-blue right here. But why is medicine a red-blue issue?
If you look at it, it's a lot of voting map. It's, you know,
those are the Democratic states,
yeah.
Mostly.
Mostly.
Well,
so,
I have a theory on that, but it's probably not going to make me very popular.
Tell us.
Tell you?
Yeah. We have about 3-4 minutes, so we'd love to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, I really do believe that the type of person in this day and age who's voting Republican with what that party has become are not free-thinking people. I think they're a little bit more like the lemmings that are jumping off the cliff. And I believe that there's a lack of compassion for anybody that isn't just like them. And it really, I mean, there's not a reason in the world why one person should have a right to say what another person has the right to do when it doesn't impact them. Like, what is it any of their business? And the only way that we're going to really get through this is we need to have somebody bring a test case before the Supreme Court, just like what happened with same-sex marriage, what happened with Roe v. Wade, what happened with some of these other ones, that causes a sea change. And I think that that's really the only way that we're going to be able to do it. But I'm very afraid, because of the makeup of the Supreme Court, whether we're going to be able to be successfully do that.
Agreed, but don't you think, in fairness to them, don't you think that a lot of this is the things we've been talking about, this campaign that Anslinger did, that the ignorance on this, that we just need more education? Because as people like me have learned now the benefits of cannabis, you know, our attitudes can change. And I can't tell you on Elevate the Conversation how often we do a story where there was like, I forgot, I don't want to misquote here, but it was like the governor of New Mexico. It's happened many times with politicians where you'll have a Republican governor and he is as anti-cannabis as there is. He gets out of office, he slips and breaks his back. He ends up getting on cannabis. He said it saved his life, and now he's an advocate. There's several. I can't think of their names right now, but there are several examples of this where when people have a firsthand account, then their kid gets epilepsy. Right. Oh my God! Now they have 1,000 seizures again. Now they have none. Now guess who's fighting as an advocate? So you just have to be learned. The Jeff Sessions thing bothers me because he talks completely ignorant and does not cite any. He just says, "Oh, it's bad. You're dumb. It's worse than heroin." What are you saying? You're giving no facts, no figures, no basis in anything. Let's talk about the realities of this, right?
Absolutely, I agree. I mean, all you have to, I mean, it's almost like you want to say, I hope something happens to him, that he has the opportunity to experience it firsthand, whether it's him or someone he loves. Not that I would ever want anything.
Right. I don't want to wish that on somebody, but I've seen many accounts where it happened.
Let it happen, and then see whether he's willing to let them die before actually trying this as an option.
Yeah, wait till it's your mom laying there, right?
Exactly.
It's insane
I remember
to
in
me.
1989, my mom had, I lost both my parents and my sister to cancer.
Wow.
But in 89, my mom had lung cancer, and it had gone to her brain, so that she was in just excruciating pain all the time because of where it hit in the brain. And my sister and I got her a joint to smoke, you know, and I mean, that's all I knew. I knew that it was supposed to help her not be nauseous. Maybe it was going to help her sleep. You know, this was 1989, almost, 28 years ago. And I thought, my God, I can't believe we're doing this. We're giving mom drugs. Well, my God, she was going through chemotherapies.
Right. What are those?
Exactly. I mean, it was like, how did we demonize the word, I mean.
And now look where you are, helping other cancer patients with this medicine. It's amazing. Mara, it's amazing what you're doing. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing all this with us. Why don't you tell folks how they can reach you if anyone wants to try? Hopefully they live in a state they can get to cannabis. Right. But why don't you tell people how they can reach you if maybe you can help them?
Okay. You can certainly go to auntzeldas.org. It's right there under my name, auntzeldas.org. And there you can see what products we have, and you can join. And also, we have a sister company, Calla Spring Wellness, that is also, you can reach it from Aunt Zelda's, where you can book an appointment with one of our doctors to actually do an in-depth patient intake, to have them actually help you to understand how to use your existing medications, your treatments, and incorporate cannabis into it without any risks of side effects. And
it's not just for cancer patients, right? Or is it? It's for anything, right? Any sort of health ailment.
Any sort of health ailment.
Because cannabis helps for so many different things. That's the thing. And that's the other thing. We always talk about how it's not really, people think it's for kids or whatever. The things that cannabis helps with are the ailments you get when you get old.
Well, that's why we really focus on the diseases of aging.
There you go.
Working with children kind of happened as a result of, parents talk in waiting rooms. We started with the first patient in 2011, I want to say. And that, in fact, I got a call yesterday from a woman who was referred to us from that first family in 2011.
Wow.
Our first cancer patient was an elderly man with prostate cancer, but our second one was a 6-year-old little girl with a brain tumor. So, I mean, but I personally have replaced so many pharmaceuticals, it's unbelievable, with cannabis. You know, I used to be on, it's crazy to hear it now, but I was on 26 at the same time.
Wow.
And now I'm on 3, and cannabis.
There you go, folks. I'm telling you, it's something to look into. If you don't know about it, look up cannabis, do some research, be educated about it. It'll help you. Mara, thank you for the good work you're doing with all these patients. I'm sure they appreciate it. We really appreciate you coming on Truth Be Told and sharing the history of cannabis with us, as well as the different things that you're doing with patients, and that's really great. Tony and I really appreciate it.
We do. Thank you so much. All right, well, guys, thank you guys for tuning in. We really appreciate it. You can go to our YouTube channel. Please subscribe. Check us out on iHeartRadio, and you can check us on YouTube and iTunes and Stitcher, all those
places. And now you can go to our
website,
which is truthbetoldwebtv.com.
And subscribe to that, because we send out newsletters every so often, so we'd love that. Until next time, I'm Tony Sweet.
Captain Ron.
Take care.